Executives at 5 pharmacy benefit managers are in the hot seat today on Capitol Hill. The Senate Finance Committee will grill the company's heads on skyrocketing drug prices and possible solutions to lower costs. Joining us now, Senate Finance Committee Chairman Senator Grassley. And Senator, whenever we try to get to the real bottom of what's happening with drug prices, we always come up with the idea that there's just too many middlemen involved and that some of these rebates don't make any sense. What is going to be the thrust of the questioning today for these companies?
To answer that very question about the middle people, in this case called pharmacy benefit managers, they're the ones that are in the middle between the drug companies and the insurance companies and the hospitals and all the consumers, including your local pharmacists. And there's a lot of secrecy. There's not a lot of understanding of the role they play. What do they do with $170 billion of rebates? How do the consumers benefit from it? Our goal is to end this secrecy, get to transparency. With transparency comes accountability, and maybe the marketplace will have a better chance to work, and drug prices will come down for the consumer.
Seems like this could have been on the table 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. They've had a long reign. If there really are some bad actors there, and there's got to be bad actors somewhere. It seems like. I mean, I don't normally wouldn't say that about everyone, but if you know you want to maximize profit, obviously that's what private companies want to do. But you need the transparency and a fair playing field. That's what we're talking about, and it should have been something that we were very aware of all along, because obviously something's broken somewhere. And
that hearing is about this very subject, and you described it very well. Hopefully get to the bottom of it. But we've got a lot of players, a lot of questions to be asked. You know, we had 7 pharmaceutical companies in 3 or 4 weeks ago, pharmacy benefit managers today. Hopefully end up with some legislation that will drive down drug prices. But there's also other things that are in other committees, like the Judiciary Committee I'm on, the pay-for-play game that keeps generics off the market, the Creates bill that we passed the House last week will go a long ways in helping us get generics on the market. The president's got on his desk now Grassley Wyden bill called the Right Rebate bill, which takes care of some of the problems that I investigated 4 years ago when Mylan drove up the price of EpiPens, took $1.7 billion from the taxpayers. Justice got back maybe $465 billion, but they still get away with $1.2 billion because HHS isn't doing its job. We should be able to get all that money back, and HHS, through the Right Rebates bill, will have more responsibilities to police the rebate system in the first place. In other words, rebates have a lot of secrecy just in that name, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
There's a possibility that we start importing some of the price controls from other countries. I've always thought that was a bad idea, but now even some Republicans seem to think that that's something we should do. I mean,
I think it's a bad idea too. Right now, it's being promoted by Secretary Azar, following on a speech that the president gave last June to drive down drug prices. The secretary is working very hard to do it. Right now, what you described is in legislation, but it's also Secretary Azar pursuing it. And from that standpoint, he put something out there for comment. I doubt if it'll go ahead with a regulation, but what it is it's bringing a lot of these players, pharmaceutical companies, to the table to negotiate where maybe we can get drug prices down without necessarily aligning them up with what some foreign country is paying for the drugs.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that where both sides say, well, we don't really mean it. but let's have the conversation, because that's not a great. I can describe some unintended consequences if we start doing it that way. You see that the innovation in drug development in a lot of the countries that have those price controls kind of dries up. Yeah, I mean, if you're not able to recoup the drug development costs when it takes 10, 12 years and billions of dollars to develop these things, and then it's going to be, you know, you're going to be capped on a certain price, then you're going to stop developing them. And we're still the innovator. This is the country where it happens. It doesn't seem right that they have those laws in other countries where they're able to cap those prices, but it doesn't mean that, you know, two rights don't make a wrong, that we start doing it here, right?
But it does irritate me as a senator. It irritates me as a policymaker that we're paying.
Well, we need more market forces to make it come down here in this country. You got a question?
Just what those market forces, how do you set up the right market forces?
It's tough. It's tough because it's not necessarily, you know, there's 12-year patent protect. There's all those other.
Well, but this is the question. What is it that we can do from a policy perspective to create a market system that actually creates
bigger,
maybe let I don't know, big government groups bargain on prices, right, Senator? Something like that.
Well, I started to say that it's irritating to me as a senator that the American consumer is probably paying 75 to 90% of the cost of developing drugs.
Exactly.
And then the other countries get it. We ought to find some way that they pay their fair share.
So the president just said the WTO finds that the European Union subsidies to Airbus has adversely impacted the United States, which will now put tariffs on $11 billion of EU products, ! The EU has taken advantage of the U.S. on trade for many years. It will soon stop. Is that something that you support, Senator?
Well, of course, because it's based on the rule of law, a WTO decision, something that's been around for 15 years, just finally doing what we can legally do. Maybe the president's been criticized for tariffs before in a way where they weren't quite as legitimate. But when you have the rule of law through the WTO and they declared the subsidies in Europe against that rule of law, then of course it's perfectly legal for the United States to put on what we call countervailing duties. And these tariffs that the president's talking about is one way we get even with them. Just like we won a case against Europe on whether beef with hormones in it should be allowed to get into Europe for their consumers. We eat it in the United States all the time, and Europe put in countervailing duties against a decision we were on in the WTO. The rule of law in international trade is a very good thing.
All right, Senator. I like meat too. I'm worried. You know, I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to eat it, though. You know what I'm talking about, Senator. But thank you. Appreciate your time this morning, Senator Grassley, Chuck Grassley.